We went all over the country in the US, shopping it to film festivals, meeting with distribution agents. Nobody wanted it. It was just really hard to get our foot in the door as a COVID specific content piece because people just immediately turned it down without even watching it, going, oh no, our audience is not going to want anything to do with COVID. It's just too dark. It's too soon. It's too soon, you know? And when we showed it in theaters, people were roaring. They were losing their minds, and people were coming up to us saying, oh my gosh, thank you so much for giving me permission to laugh again about this, you know?
Welcome back to the show, guys. On ArtVance today, I talk with director, writer, producer, and actor Kelsey Cooke. Let me tell you a little bit about Kelsey. She grew up acting professionally in Hollywood, signing with her first agent at the age of 7. She earned her bachelor's degree in theater arts from Vanguard University and pursued a Broadway, TV, and film career in New York upon graduating, working on shows like Pan Am and Royal Pains. Her work eventually brought her back to Hollywood, where she trained in improv at the Groundlings, UCB, Second City, and IO West. She worked on projects like Life Partners, Tribeca and Sundance Film Festival, Black November, Vivica Fox, Bad Teacher, CBS, and the Veronica Mars movie. In 2020, she co-founded This Is Hard to Read Productions and is an award-winning producer, writer, and actor on the award-winning feature comedy Reopening. Up next, Kelsey's directed the feature comedy Back to Bridgewood, coming soon. She is now based in Nashville, where she and her husband, Chris Guerra, founded the new improv and sketch comedy school, Oddity Improv. I tell you what, guys, couples like Kelsey and her husband, Chris, such a prototype for couples who are working in creative industries today, who are actually making the way, whether it be through comedy, whether it be through filmmaking, writing, whatever it is. But they're such collaborators, and it's such a joy and inspiration to see that developing. And you'll hear a bit more about what they do on TikTok and Instagram. And also, most of all, you hear about their latest movie that has just been released on BlazeTV, Reopening. So let's go over and meet Kelsey now. All right, guys, welcome back to ArtVance. On the show today, we have Kelsey Cooke, who is a writer, director, actor, producer, and we're going to be talking about hers and Chris's, her husband's, latest feature film, which is a comedy that's now available on BlazeTV, as well as her history in the arts industry in Hollywood as an actor, her current mission field to women, raising up champions in the media industry. So you're going to love this episode. It's going to be full of good stuff. So Kelsey, welcome to ArtVance.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Such a joy to have you. So, hey, could you just give us a snapshot of Kelsey, Chris, and family?
Yes, absolutely. So I've been married to my husband, Chris Guerra. I know it's so weird. It's like a weird industry thing sometimes when a married couple has two different last names. And mostly is because someone started their career as their maiden name. So in my case, Kelsey Cooke, it was just always my acting name. It's been registered on websites I can't get rid of. So I'm just stuck as Kelsey Cooke, but I am married to Chris Guerra. He is right now sort of famous on TikTok. He is the Facebook marketplace guy on TikTok, Chris W. Guerra. And that just started from funny random things that happened during COVID lockdown. And we have two wonderful kids, Kennedy, who is going to be 9 next week, and Clyde is 6, and a golden doodle named Maple. So that's us in a nutshell.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
So good. And yes, I'm a fan of that TikTok channel. It's so much fun. We've all had those funny conversations with people asking about items we're selling on Facebook Marketplace. It's great.
It's crazy.
So could you take us a little bit through the origin story of Kelsey Cooke? So you started out as an actress in Hollywood at 7 years old. Could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, my parents went to Oral Roberts University in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So I was born there. My dad was a producer and film director. So he moved out to LA right out of school with my mom and moved us as a family when I was 6. And then I immediately I loved performing ever since I was little. I think my parents could see that really quick. So I found an agent, the Savage Agency, who's still there in LA at 7 years old. And I got into a love for theater in middle school. My husband and I met at Biola University in Los Angeles for theater. And then we ended up getting married and moving to New York City to do musical theater and Broadway. And I ended up doing TV out there again, which led me back to LA. So we came back, did more television and film. And when we locked down, Chris and I developed our own production company because we were really itchy and we didn't want to wait for the industry. So we just decided, hey, I'm tired of waiting to be, quote unquote, discovered as an actor. It's just the most frustrating process, knowing that you have talent to share and not being able to share it because of red tape and closed doors. And so we thought, let's just do this ourselves. It was sort of at that beginning of that TikTok sort of be a creator, everybody can create stage on Instagram and TikTok and social media in general. So we said, let's just start a production company. And we ended up developing, writing, and producing this film Reopening with a buddy of ours, Matt Coppin, who I met at Biola University as well. And so we just all decided to do this movie. And that really spun us into our own production company and in what we're doing now, which is just filmmaking and kind of bouncing between writer, director, actor, producer. And so now we're just on a roll with that.
It's so exciting. And I love the simplicity. You've just painted a picture of accessing the industry doesn't necessarily start with waiting to be discovered. It actually starts with our initiative. Like, I'm going to go and create what's in my mind to create. And that opens doors. Now, let's talk about your latest film. Let's jump straight into talking about Reopening.
Sure.
In here in Australia, we're yet to experience the full joy of what's going on over there in terms of this movie. But could you tell us what inspired the movie? Some of the comedic inspiration. Obviously, life is a huge comedic inspiration. But
yes.
Yeah, could you talk about how did that come to be between you and Chris?
Yeah, actually, so me and Chris and our filmmaking partner, Matt, we came together out of the boredom of the pandemic thinking, what can we possibly do? And we were very limited with the restrictions going on. I think you guys had it worse, honestly, but we had it pretty bad. And we were in Los Angeles at the time, really locked down. And we thought, okay, well, during the lockdown, what could we start with? We could do something interview style, kind of like you see on The Office or Parks and Rec, or I don't know if anybody's seen the Christopher Guest movies like Waiting for Guffman, Best in Show. We grew up with those and we just loved them. We thought, oh my gosh, this would be the perfect thing that we could do with a small cast and a small crew with COVID restrictions. I actually became a COVID compliance officer for film and television. And because, everything was very unknown at the time, we didn't know what was good or bad or what we should take seriously and all of that. But there were some pretty silly things that were going on at the same time that we felt like we could all, as a society together, no matter what your belief system or political system or anything, we could all have a chuckle over a few things. And these were all real things that we had found on the internet, scrolling, the news at night, like the pods that people were in trying to do band practices and theater practices. So this is about a small town theater trying to reopen their doors during the height of the global pandemic. And these silly characters, kind of like The Office, where they're just very silly. They get into stupid situations, but at the end of the day, they have such heart. And Chris and I say with our production company, this is hard to read, we say we make comedies with heart. We can be as silly as we want, as dumb as we want, but at the end of the day, if we all learn something about who we are and we find joy and hope, then we've done our job. So that's what that's about.
I love it. That's so good. So it's currently being sold to BlazeTV.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that journey. How did that come to be in terms of BlazeTV, and who are BlazeTV, just for us Aussies, so we can get a bit of an insight to that?
Yeah, so it's kind of twofold. So when Blaze approached us, we actually had no intention of going with anything like them. They are a conservative news network as a start. That's always what they've been. However, they also had a real passionate about bringing a new streaming service where we could stream movies that the whole family could watch together, bringing really good specifically to comedy back. And so, going back and seeing all of our favorite comedies from the 90s and 2000s, we're like, how do we go back and make that? We've had a serious gap in the industry of really creating original, good comedy content. And so this is where Chris and I have a passion in kind of inserting ourselves a little bit. And so we feel like Reopening is part of that. That's the start. It's the start of it for us. And so we shopped it around. We took it to a year of film festivals. We completed production And then in 2021 and in 2022, we spent the whole year, we went globally. We went to Cannes Film Festival, which is going to go on again next week. It was just the most amazing experience. We went all over the country in the US, shopping it to film festivals, meeting with distribution agents, and nobody wanted it. It was just really hard to get our foot in the door as a COVID specific content piece, because people just immediately turned it down without even watching it, going, oh no, our audience is not going to want anything to do with COVID. It's just too dark. It's too soon. It's too soon, or, nobody's ready to laugh about that. We just know, I don't know. They just made a lot of assumptions about their audience. And when we showed it in theaters, people were roaring, they were losing their minds, and people were coming up to us saying, oh my gosh, thank you so much for allowing me to laugh again, like giving me a reason to laugh again. Thanks for giving me permission to laugh again about this, and so we felt like the audience and the distribution people were like, they were so separated and conflicting with each other. And so we shopped it around, and Blaze approached us and just said, hey, we know our audience is going to love this, and our audience is ready to laugh about this, and we can take it. And we just said, hey, we want to make sure, though, our intention with making this was not to make fun of COVID or to, make fun of some of the really serious things that did happen. There are plenty of serious things that we were worried about during COVID. It's really to just give joy and hope. And we want to make sure that that's preserved in this process and it's not made political. And they completely agreed. And they did such a great job with our launch, which happened last week in Dallas, Texas. And all the shows, Glenn Beck is one that's on there. There's a bunch of different shows that we interviewed with, and they were just so kind in saying, thank you for making something so well done, and in a way that we can all enjoy it, left, right, up, down, wherever you come from, whatever your belief system is. We can all come together and enjoy this as a great family-friendly comedy. So, yeah.
That's so cool.
So we finally found it. I mean, it took us a while.
Yeah, look, and that's the thing, learning to laugh at these situations is, there's always a reason why, we don't want to laugh yet. It's usually either because we're still feeling like we need to get healed from it or whatever trauma we've been through. And then there's other reasons. And it's so good that you've been able to bring that out, because us as Aussies, one of the things we love to do is laugh at ourselves if we're not too insecure. So no, it's really good. I really appreciate
do think
you
this is
that.
great for an Australian audience. We've been dying to get it into Australia. We have so many friends there who I know just will know and love this movie so much. It's the perfect style of comedy, that mockumentary, very dry humor style that we know that Australians will love.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Yeah. I really hope we get to all see it soon. In cinemas would be awesome. But let's wait and see.
Exactly.
Now, Kelsey, you lead a women's influence ministry movement. Could you talk to us a little bit about that and what inspired your heart for that? Because it's an exciting space, especially in the area of media, and you're from Nashville, but in the area of Hollywood and media. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, actually, this was an organization based off an organization my parents started together called Influence Lab. My mom took a section of that and just kind of chopped it off and went over just for women, called Influence Women. You can check it out at influencewomen.org. And Influence Women was started in Hollywood by my mom because she had a heart for women in media. And now I don't think that women talk about it enough. Maybe they do and I missed it. I don't know. But since I became kind of higher up in directing, producing, writing, I think as an actor, it's harder to see, but on the production side, how underrepresented women are in Hollywood and in the media industry, and how tough it is for us to be taken seriously. I think most of it is a lot of men in the industry, I think, are very unaware, and they don't even know how they're talking to women, or they don't even know how they're addressing women. I don't think that I would like to think that they don't really know what they're doing, or they're not intentionally doing things that make us feel small, but that's how we do. A lot of us in the industry feel very small when we're in meetings with mostly men in this industry. And so I think that I wanted to create a space specifically in Nashville. When we moved, my husband and I moved from Los Angeles to Nashville just 9 months ago, because we saw this really exciting energy that was going on here in the filmmaking community, but as a creative community as a whole. However, when I moved here, I noticed that there was a big disconnect between women in the industry. Nobody knew who they are. We didn't know where to gather. Nobody knew where are these women in the industry. There are actors here. Oh my gosh, I didn't know there were actors here. I thought they were only in Atlanta and LA. And I'm like, no, there are lots of really talented, amazing people here, but nobody knows how to connect. And so I told my mom I wanted to I'm like, I'm going to steal this and I'm going to make you a branch here in Nashville. And now there are actually branches in Atlanta, in Orange County. And so we have branches in lots of different states throughout the country. So Nashville was my baby, and I wanted to just create a place where women in the industry, not just filmmaking, but also social media influencers and writers, authors, publishers, anybody within media and entertainment could gather together. Music, especially since this is Music City, right? That we could get together and really collaborate and make sure that we were not only just encouraging each other, because there's plenty of places we can go for encouragement and inspiration, but that we could actually get the work done,
Guys, I really hope you're enjoying season 2 of ArtVance. I've had so much enjoyment creating it. Can I ask you a favor to go over to Apple Podcasts and write a 5-star review for us? It will help us reach more people. As well, could you make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, Elliot Bonza, as well as subscribe to the podcast on Apple? I really appreciate it. So yeah, tell me a bit how that outworks. So have you got like writers' rooms that you kind of do, like mock writers' rooms, or kind of like talent quests, or how does that outwork in terms of just exposing women to those opportunities to really rise and stand tall?
Yeah, this is very new. So like I said, I've been here for 9 months. We had our launch event in November, and I just had my second event last month. So we are just baby, and it's really just me running the show by myself, not fully knowing what I'm doing, but I'm surrounded by a lot of influential women who are like, how can I help? How can I help? So we are really looking for funding, and we're looking for people to surround us to donate. We need just more locations. The last location we had so many people come, there was no more parking. So it's definitely fulfilling a need here, but I need more support. And me doing what I'm doing full time, running a production studio, running now a new improv and comedy school, which we'll talk about in a minute. I have my hands in so many things that I need more women who are also passionate about this to surround me and support this community so that we can be consistent. So right now my capacity is about 2 events a year, but we're hoping that smaller groups will break out. I'd love to see writers rooms happen, writers rounds. I'd love to see women I know there are women who are outside the entertainment industry who are just supporters and want to be mentors, to do smaller groups in pockets throughout the year, outside of these 2 big main events. That's the goal.
Love it. So good. It's spreading. And I think, that whole thing of Influence Lab is such an amazing concept, that term, because it creates such accessibility for people to step into greatness without having to, like you said, go through all the red tape. And because so many people feel like they have to ask for permission to be who they're called to be, to do what they're called to do.
And Influence Lab, I should say, influencelab.org, that is the organization founded by my parents. And it is a ministry that goes out into the world and helps train, takes media professionals from the US and all over the world, but also goes into areas where they don't have resources and gives them resources and training in media to help spread the gospel and to help spread good news in film and television at a higher level and help train people to make better media.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. I had your dad, Phil Cooke, on the podcast.
Oh, you did? Good.
Yeah. And that was just such a privilege. And so seeing that family thread, that legacy within your family is so exciting.
It's really special. Yeah.
It's so good. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about the improv school. That's an exciting idea. I love this because I teach actors. I teach students acting, screen acting and filmmaking in school, and 500 a week. And I just love seeing them get into that space of improv. And usually they don't tend to use much improv in primary school, which is kind of like your elementary school ages,
Sure.
upper ages. And yeah, I want to hear all about it. Improv school. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, so you may not know this, but our movie is 100% improv. We actually took about a 25 page outline and insanely detailed characters, and we applied those. And we told actors scene to scene, we're going to get from point A to point B. This is this is the information that's important. And then we said action. And so we developed these characters, but we also developed the storyline as it went, and things changed according to what the characters came up with. But it's an improv movie. So
Wow.
it's really fun. And so a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, how did you do that? And so we want to take everything that we learned from that process and everything. I mean, I went to every improv school you can think of in LA. I learned every technique, and I'm taking all of those things and putting it into developing our own curriculum, a brand new original
Wow.
curriculum for our improv and sketch comedy school. We'd love to do sketch comedy. We'd love to take that and help filter in all the best of the talent here in Nashville for film and television. So,
Wow, that's exciting. So I want to jump back to when you said the whole film, as in the newest film that you've just released, Reopening.
yep, reopening.
Available on BlazeTV, everybody.
That's right.
Was 100%.
Watchreopening.com.
Come on.
Yeah.
Was 100% improvised. Now, let's talk about some of the technicalities within that. So each scene had an outline, a goal, and each character had a goal in the scene that was pretty much just outlined. But then how did you know with regards to, say, all your camera spots in terms of when someone would talk, and was that outlined as well, or was that improv? Was it just their dialogue improv, or their actions?
It was crazy because we were working on with such a skeleton crew due to the COVID restrictions we were under. It was, me oftentimes running around operating different things. Our co-writer, co-director, Matt Coppin, he was our director of photography. And so he ran around with a camera on his back, like a steady cam. And then he also set up 1 or 2 cameras that were just set up. And so we were kind of moving cameras around as we went, but we would just let a scene go. And the actors we worked with were just so professional and so well-versed in the art of improv that we really trusted them. And so they knew how to operate in front of a camera. They knew how to move around with a camera in mind. And then the camera just moved around to make room. And sometimes we'd be like, okay, hey, go back. We need to do that again. And so then based on that, we would go back and repeat what we just improv to get a couple takes of it. But generally, when we just said go, we went, and we were just all made aware of where the camera was. So yeah. But Matt did such an incredible job. And then my husband, Chris, co-directed, co-wrote. We all wrote it together. It was really a joint filmmaking team. So yeah.
Love it. That's so good. Is there anything you're working on right now apart from the obvious release of Reopening? Is there anything you guys are working on right now that you're able to share any details about at this point in time?
Yeah, I'm part of that and opening the improv school, which is taking up a lot of time. We're hoping to be at the Factory in Franklin really soon, which is just outside Nashville. And I was actually flown out in February back to LA to direct a new feature comedy that a friend of mine she wrote. And I'm going to share that very soon. It's actually on IMDb right now. It's called Back to Bridgewood. And it's a very sweet comedy about a woman who was a big star, and she got wrapped up in all the celebrity, and she had an accident, and she's got to work through the fact that she ends up realizing she's a bit of a bully, and how that sort of changes her life, having the accident come into play and what she has to learn through that. So it's going to be amazing. It's going to be great. And we're working on editing through that right now. So we're hoping that will be released this year. And that's called Back to Bridgewood. And then we are just hoping for a next project to get off the ground shooting this year. And we don't have any information on that quite yet, but we're just hoping to get back behind the camera soon. Yeah.
Love it. That's awesome. Now, talk a bit about your relationship with God. How has his presence in your life, your faith influenced? Let's maybe look at acting first. How have you kind of experienced that inspiration from God? and how has it influenced your life as an actor?
Yeah, I think, it's funny. I have met so many people within the faith-based film community since I've moved to Nashville. A lot of those guys are out here. They go to my church even. The guys that did Andy Irwin, who did Jesus Revolution, which is amazing. He's awesome. He's a friend of mine, and we go to church together. And I love that community, and I've just never broken into it. My dad started in the faith-based film community, and I just have never, we all feel like we're called to different things. And I hope
Mm,
actually to be a part of that, because I do want to help them in their quest to be better and do better work. I think that's really important. I think as Christians, we are called to do our best work, and that has not always been reflected, unfortunately, in the filmmaking community. And I think that
mm,
there has started to be a change in that, which I'm really excited about. My dad,
yeah.
specifically, one thing that he really gleaned on me as a child, just watching him and what he did growing up in the industry, was that we should do our best work, and that not enough people do that. And so it
Mm,
was always his mission to make sure that he could teach people how to do better, to help teach Christians and believers how to do better in film and television making. And so that's what I've been called to do. But I feel like I've just always been called into the secular world of things, and that's been my job, just to do my best work in that. So it's been a really interesting journey. But acting, um, and dealing with some of that, I've really had to know where my lines have been drawn with my boundaries, what I'm willing to do, what I'm willing to say. And so I've had to have really clear boundaries, and those have been tested and tested over and over again. And I think the most important thing for me was to be surrounded by people that I could always go to trust, who would heart check me to make sure that I wasn't wanting to do something because of the money or the fame or the what attention or whatever. That I've been always surrounded by people that I could go to, that I knew that sometimes it wasn't the answer I wanted to hear, but it was the truth, and what I know that I would not regret later on, because I do know even believers who have gotten into the industry and really regretted things that they did later on. And I never wanted to put myself in that position. So I do feel very, very lucky, very blessed to have been surrounded by enough people who really, who just kept me in check, and who mentored me through my career, my entire life. That was really important.
mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that you've hit some really key notes there, because some people feel called to mainstream arts, and then they're like, well,
Mhm.
what do I say yes to? What do I say no to? And that's that can be a really tricky place to navigate. Would you say you summarize it up as it really comes down to your own personal relationship with the Lord? And when you feel that conviction inside you saying, hey, this is beneath your value, I want you to, how would you summarize that kind of, obviously you got people supporting you, um but would you summarize it down to your own unique relationship with the Lord?
Yeah, I think that's really important. It's hard to it's hard sometimes to hear God's voice. It's hard sometimes. I think you have to surround yourself not only with people that will mentor you, but people who will go, hey, are you sure that's God's voice telling you to do that? I think
Mm,
sometimes it's hard to um yeah, it's hard to hear sometimes over our own egos, over our own wants and desires. Truly, it comes down to that. It's like what I want and desire, what I think is good for me, versus what I really feel like is God's path or his will for my career, my life. And I think ultimately, it's so funny. Our career as an actor, your career is all about you. You are selling yourself, and it's me, 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 me. And so if we then have to think, if I'm a vessel that is being used for making disciples, like what is our true core mission on this earth? Furthering
mm,
the kingdom, making disciples, and that will go create and make more disciples. If that is the thing, how am I doing those things in every movie, every TV show, every role that I play, even the minuscule stuff? And maybe it's not the role, maybe it's not even that. I feel like God sometimes called me on set to something because of a person that was there. And you don't know until the end of it, and you're like, oh, that was why. you know.
Mm.
And so sometimes you feel like, there were sets sometimes I feel like I was going to walk away from because, oh, this is beneath me, or this is, seems it's like not going to be worth it for whatever reason. And then by the end of the day, you're like, oh, I was there just to be a sounding board for this person, to be a light in this life. So it's really interesting how God's used my career, but oftentimes you just don't see it when you're in the middle of it. So I think being really in tune to God's voice is not just about you, it's about who you're surrounded by. Again, I just have to go back to that. I think it's my church community, because as an actor, especially if you are working a ton, you're not always able to go to church, but the church is so much bigger than a building, right? So I was surrounded by people who could mentor me and speak truth into my life constantly. So hope that
Yeah, that's
answers that
awesome.
question.
Yeah, it does. I think, yeah, a lot of Christians can feel lonely when they're going into the artist life, and they're, can sometimes feel misunderstood by their church community unless they've got a really solid base of friends that go, no, we believe in, that God's called people to the arts today, just like he's called them into church ministry. He calls them anywhere, he calls them according to their unique design. And so no, that's really good. Love it. Can I talk a little bit about, between your acting and your writing? So your writing, you guys really focus on the area of, comedy, and at the moment, I don't know, you might have other projects in mind in different genres. Between your acting and your comedy, your writing, what do
Mhm.
you like to, what kind of roles do you love playing? What have you loved playing over the years as an actor? Because
Yeah.
sometimes you love writing a certain way, but that isn't sometimes your favorite characters to play. I don't know. What would you say to that? What's
Yeah,
been
that's a
your
great
favorite?
question. I love that. You're totally right about that. I never thought that I would go into comedy. Actually, what's funny is I really started doing mostly very dramatic. I was trained even in Shakespeare and very classical acting training. And I loved just period pieces. Like I would die to be just in some sort of, Jane Eyre, Charlotte Bronte, like, old period piece. Give me Downton Abbey, give me,
Yeah, that'd be fun.
and so I feel like, yeah, part of me feels like I was meant to live in a different era. And so I love that. And I love drama. I love drama. But, meeting Chris, and I think if you know him, you can't have a conversation seriously with the guy. He's just so funny. And we just loved improv training together. When we got back to LA after the New York phase that we had doing Broadway stuff, we just fell into comedy. We just loved it. And improv is scary. It's really scary. Most people are like, I hate it. It's so scary. We
Mm,
think stand up is scary. Like I've never done it, but that's sort of the thing for us. We're like, ooh, that's scary. Let's try that. And that's our personality. And so we just love to try the scary stuff because we know it stretches us as people, as actors, as performers, as writers, and any life experience as writers is like gold. So we love writing out of what we know, and what we know is, silly life experiences. We laugh at our life experiences. We have some crazy life experiences that we just think, I think most people would think that's really tragic or that's really sad. And we just think, well, we just have to laugh about it, because if life doesn't have joy and hope, I don't know what we're here for. So
mm,
we have to find joy and hope in everything that we do and everything that we write. We want redeemable characters. We want redemption in our writing. And so we focus on those things, and it just gives us so much joy. But for me, okay, so characters though, yeah, like I'd love to do something in time period, but I do see myself, I brought myself a lot into Penny. That was my character in Reopening.
mm,
And so you'll see that, I'm sure. But I love stretching myself and doing things against my type. I think my type obviously is just kind of, it's always been the girl next door. It's always been, young mom, or I don't know, just those kind of very, I don't know, seemingly on paper, very dull characters. And so I love finding silliness and quirkiness in that, and doing something against the grain. So that's always something I'm looking for.
it's awesome. So good. Also see you'd suit a good like police detective in some
Yeah. Oh,
crime
I'd
show.
love to do. Yes. Give me like CSI, SVU. Yes, 100%.
Nashville. They need to start a CSI at Nashville. Yeah, super cool.
Yes, that would be good.
Now,
On it.
that's what do you see, God? You know, you've said it a few different ways, but if we just can zero in on what do you see God doing in the arts and entertainment industry right now? Because we've gone through such a transformation in terms of, you know, policy and procedures and all that around the
Yeah.
COVID time. It's kind of been a time to really either new things are put in place and we don't understand why, or, you know, all this other stuff that's been there for, you know, centuries or not even centuries, decades, is seemingly irrelevant now. What do you see God doing in the midst of that? Who is he raising up? What kind of things do you see him doing from his heart for artists and entertainers in your industry right now?
Yeah, I think that that goes along with the fact that there have been so many closed doors in Hollywood and the entertainment industry where us little filmmakers with very small budgets haven't really felt like we had a leg to stand on. Where could we go? What could we do? And now with this, with the advancements in just your iPhone, like what I'm on right now is my iPhone. I'm on my
Mm,
iPhone and it shoots in 4K. And the
mm,
fact that I can literally shoot an entire movie and I've seen it done on an iPhone and put it up on a movie screen, it's really incredible. And I feel like we finally have the power to use the tools that we have literally in our pocket to do
mm,
great things. And if you feel like God's called you to do something really great and you have this talent that you just feel like, I'm just getting closed doors, I'm getting closed doors, we now have the power to then go out and create and do what we were created to do on our own without any permission. So, you
mm,
know, I think that there's a huge open door there to tell your story, to tell the stories that God put on your heart, and make not just, you know, student film quality stuff because you don't have the equipment, but now to make cinematic, quality, high quality stuff with very little budget. So, I mean, I think budget has been that blocker for so many people for so long. And
mm,
something that I learned from the film festival circuit was there are entire categories in film festivals for stuff that's shot on your iPhone.
mm,
And it costs very little to enter, you know, I mean, it costs a lot to enter multiple film festivals. It can really add up and you have to be smart about who and what you're doing. That's a whole nother podcast in itself, film festival stuff. But the point being is like, you do have the resources, you do have the stuff. So you can't let anything like that get in the way. And I know that, you know, that's a little piece of advice, I guess, in the industry, but I just feel like, I don't know. I think that I just feel really passionate about, you know, I know what God has called me to do. And for a long
mm,
time, I've just felt the block of the industry, all of these blocks, all these blockades, all this red
mm.
tape. And I feel like if God has put it on your heart to do something, you have the resources to, like, there are no excuses anymore.
That's
You
right.
know, and I feel like there's just so many open doors. And for me,
Mm,
even with influence women, all these things, and what I've been talking about with surrounding yourself with people who will encourage you to do God's work, I think staying focused in that. I think there are enough places now that we can go and get really great resources for just staying spiritually grounded and all of that too. So I see God really. Here's a separate thing too. I guess with all that's going on in the world, there's a lot of distractions, a lot of political, emotional, just society stuff going on. There's a lot of garbage on the news. And I think where we have a very small window here where there's a lot of distractions and there is actually a huge need for very positive, light, bright content where us as Christians, if we're really smart, can go out and bring a lot of hope and joy into the world. And that just goes back to what my husband and I are just feel like we're called to do. And so I think there are more people that are called to do that as well. So I'm sure, you know, maybe you're listening to this right now and you're like, I don't know how to do this, or I don't know if I feel called to this. And I just would say that we have a moment right now where there's a lot of healing that is needed. And I think film, art in general, media, we can heal with that or we can hurt
mm,
with that. And I think it can very quickly go either way. And so I think as a believer in the industry if our job is to go and make disciples or to go and make a kingdom impact in some way, shape, or form. We have every resource, social media. There's so many platforms, so many ways that we can get good, positive, hopeful, joyful messages out there. And so we need to be the ones on the airwaves. We need to be the ones that are shining right now and overcoming the darkness with our light. So,
which requires that we don't get swept up in the distraction of what's relevant, and what's being driven by what's currently big, what's hitting headlines. You know, it requires that focus. And I love that you guys have modeled that through your work at This Is Hard to Read Productions, through your filmmaking, through your acting, through your faith, and how that's influenced it. You've mentioned a few disciplines. If you could just maybe mention 3 to 5 disciplines that you feel like have been kind of things that kept you grounded through the years, kept you focused on the goal, and kept you encouraged when people have not given you the message that, you know, it lines up with God's message to you. What would you say some of those disciplines are?
Yeah, I think, right, fellowship, whether that is in a church or in a small group or with friends who are, you know, all just really grounded, believing people outside the industry. I think it's important not just to have friends and people who are in the industry, although it's important to know who those people are. I now just really want to surround myself with like-minded people to do good work with. But aside that, just on a personal level, I also have a whole group of friends that I surround myself with who have nothing to do with the industry, because it's a total outside perspective coming in, seeing what I'm doing. It's that heart check, right? Because they can see really quickly if I'm just doing something for my own glory or if I'm actually doing it for God's glory. And it's a different perspective. So yeah, it's like that, who you're surrounding yourself with. It's, you know, it's the obvious, like being in God's word. Yeah. Like for real, you know, at some point, you know, I can tell when I have not been, and that's not just opening up your Bible for an hour or whatever every day. It looks so different. And I want to encourage you that I was encouraged very recently, the last few years. I've been learning what quiet time with the Lord means to me. And it's not just sitting down and opening my Bible, although that's amazing. And we should all have God's word written on our hearts, right? But for me, sometimes I get so busy picking up my kids from everything, and life is so busy with kids, and my kids are really little. And so if I'm running around in my car all day, I go, oh my gosh, what could I listen to? And I just snap on some, you know, really inspirational music that's on Christian radio or whatever, or a really good podcast. Like, what can I be doing to keep my mind out of the garbage, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's been, and during COVID too, I think, I told my husband, I was like, I have to stop. I have to stop listening to the news. I have to stop watching the news. I can't do it anymore because I'm clearly becoming depressed. And so I really learned through that hard time where what we're feeding our mind is so important. And our mind is feeding our spirit too. So what are you feeding your spirit with? Is it uplifting or is it garbage? So I really think that's really, really important. Those 3 things would be my top. Yeah.
That's awesome. 2 tips for people who want to excel either in their writing or acting gift. What are 2 disciplines you would suggest they invest their time and their energy into?
Okay, great. Here we go. 1, don't wait for anybody. If you feel like you're called to do something, don't wait. Go find the resources. Who are the people who have resources? If you don't have the resources, who can you call on? Who can you ask favors from? And who can you ask to get connected with? So that, in order to not wait to, you know, if you really feel called to do something, figure it out. Don't wait for anybody to tell you to do it. I have a great video on my Instagram of, it's like a duet with Jason Alexander, and he talks about this. It's a really, really great little video clip if you find it. And then the second thing I would say is that find some trusted people, whether they're in your circle or not, to be open, to get open and honest feedback from on your career. I would say sometimes we feel called to do something, but it's not quite what we thought it was going to be, or maybe it's not quite what you think it is, if that makes sense. Sometimes we feel called to do something, but we're not really good at it. And you're like, well, why did I feel called to do something? But maybe there's a different perspective you're not seeing. And you need somebody to be a sounding board to tell you, hey, what can you look at me and look at my stuff? And like, what am I really good at? If you could tell me really specifically, what type am I? Even if it's down to that, you know, I'm an actor, but I don't know what my type is. Go out and get that feedback. Find people you can trust to give you good, honest feedback.
Yes.
And it can't be family, and it can't be your friends. It has to be some kind of mentor or someone who's maybe a friend, but they're more an acquaintance, like a professional acquaintance, somebody that you know and trust their opinion on, that they would give you honest, really good quality advice on what your type is, what you're good at, and be open to that without being emotional about it. Because honestly, you have to figure that out. And the sooner that you figure it out and you don't just move forward with what you think you're good at, you will be more successful faster, instead of going like, oh, I wasn't really good at that. Now I have to go back and figure out what I am good at. And so sometimes we just need perspective. So get perspective as quickly as you can.
That's a huge one, perspective, because we have our own ideas, but we can't see ourselves. We can't see, like, you know, how we're coming across, who's gravitating to what we're doing, who's our audience.
And it's scary, right? Like, I get it. You know, you're like,
yeah.
oh, I don't think I want to know the answer to that.
Don't tell me. I'll just hire a
live
consultant
in my
that
world.
will tell me what I want to hear, you know.
I know. Yeah.
It's
Don't
good.
ask your spouse. That's a good question. Get it outside your spouse.
Yes.
Especially if they're in
Yes.
the industry too. I mean, Chris and I working together in the industry, it can be really tough. If you do have a spouse in the industry, I would just quickly say that you really have to have boundaries, and you have to figure out how to work together, but it's worth it. I really love working with Chris. We're our best partners. And sometimes we get into a rut like, oh, we're not really working great this way. How can we make this better? And so just to take the emotional side out of it, again, just, you know, being spouses, you have to be spouses and you have to be business partners if that's what you're doing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to get you guys back on together to talk us through that, because I think, you know, one of the things I know God is doing is raising up kingdom kind of marriages and couples to really shine in the arts.
Yeah. And it was
really
attacked during COVID, you know, just marriage in
Wow.
general. We saw a lot of that amongst our friends who are so young, in their 30s, and just being attacked. My marriages were attacked. So the last few years, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, hey, would you mind praying a blessing over actors, artists, writers, emerging directors and producers? Because I know that's something that you steward and you carry it, and it'd be so awesome for our listeners to receive from that
Yeah.
overflow. That'd be awesome.
I would love that. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Father God, we just lift up the industry in the name of Jesus right now. We know what darkness we are fighting in this industry. No matter what part of the industry we are a part of, God, there is darkness. There's so much darkness. And we just pray that every single person listening, and even those who are called to your kingdom to create light in this industry, would just shine so brightly, God, that we would all feel called to exactly what you would have us do in this industry, that you would tug on hearts that need to be tugged, that you would point us in the right direction without distraction, that you would give us protection more than anything. Protect every single one of us in the industry. We need protection over our families, over our hearts, over our minds, over our work, God, over our relationships. I just pray that you would bring new light in, that you would help us go and multiply our light through this industry, no matter where we're called to. God, help us to remember to point our light in your direction, and just guide us along this journey of this industry, of our life. And I pray, Lord, for more disciples, God, that you would help us surround ourselves. Show us the people that you would have us surround ourselves with. Lift us up and encourage us through challenges that are going to come our way. Help us to expect those challenges because we're doing your work, and help us to give us the tools, equip us for those challenges that are ahead, and that we know we will face because we are pointing to the kingdom. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Guys, you're listening to Kelsey Cooke. It's been so good to have you on ArtVance, Kelsey. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And we're so excited about the latest film reopening, and cannot wait to give the audiences in Australia an opportunity to see it as well as globally. We wish you all the best, and just trust that God's going to open every door that no man can shut, and shut every door no man can open for you guys.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Well, keep shining bright, keep going after God's heart for the arts industry, and we'll see you next time on ArtVance.
Bye-bye.